I would highly recommend you take a bar exam course. You're not going to be able to walk in there and not take anything. You have to give yourself enough time for studying because it's not an easy test. I thought your course was really fantastic for someone who's like me, a practicing lawyer, and really hasn't taken a bar exam for a long time and needs a refresher. I'm really happy I took your course. I'm confident I would not have passed the exam without taking the course. The Celebration Bar Review course fit what I was doing very well with being a practicing lawyer and need to refresh myself on all these various topics.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers. And today we have another successful Florida bar taker pass the exam on his first try. Congratulations, John. How's that feel?
Oh, it felt great. It felt great.
Tell me a little bit about your background and story. What brought you to taking the Florida bar exam?
That's interesting. I'm a practicing lawyer, and I went to law school in the 90s, and I worked for a large international firm here in Chicago. But my wife and I have always felt drawn to Florida and just felt if I ever wanted to move there and ever thought I wanted to practice law there, I needed to take the bar there. And as I was getting older, always been in the back of my mind. And I thought, well, gee, if I'm going to actually take the Florida bar exam, because they don't have any reciprocity, I'm getting old. I better do that. And so that kind of brought me to, I better start doing this now since I'm doing it. And I hadn't taken a bar exam. It's been over 25 years. It led me to searching around and seeing for a little help in doing that.
25 years is a long time. That had to be a daunting hill to look at, to think, oh my gosh, I got to go back and take an exam.
Yeah, I wasn't really looking forward to it, but I wanted to be able to have that option if I wanted to move to Florida and practice at a law firm. So I was motivated to do it, but it was daunting. I'm a transactional lawyer. Things like constitutional law and criminal law and civ pro and evidence and even torts. I did pretty well in law school, but I haven't touched those things since the bar exam or since I was in law school. If you don't use something, you tend to forget it. So I definitely needed a refresher on all those things.
Yeah. How long before the exam in February did you start studying for the test?
Right after I don't know if you remember, we spoke. So right after I bought the exam materials, I started. So that was back in June. Yeah, it's when we actually took a trip to Europe. My wife and we took a trip to Europe. I remember because that's when I started. And so I was on the plane. It was an overnight flight, and I was listening to your lecture on the flight and taking notes as I sat on this long flight to London. And that's when I started. So it was in June. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to use that time on the airplane, as long as you're not driving it. So you started the studies in June for the February test. And I wanted to make that point because a lot of practicing attorneys ask how long or how much time they need to study. And I think the number one that an attorney doesn't pass in Florida is they don't give themselves enough time to study. That wasn't the problem for you at all, was it?
No, you always wonder if you give yourself enough time. I was a little bit nervous because there's a lot of material, because not only do you have to study the multi-state stuff, and then there's the Florida specific stuff, which I had no idea about. And there's a lot of Florida material, and it's a hard exam. But yeah, what I would do, and this was also based on my conversation with you we had at the beginning, is that obviously I'm a practicing lawyer, so I'm working full time. I have a busy practice, but everybody has to find their own way. I take the train into work. It's about a half an hour train ride each way. So I would plug in, and on that train ride, I would be either listening to a lecture or doing a practice exam or studying my notes or something each way. So that'd give me an hour, usually every day. And then usually I would try to somehow fit in, maybe depending on how busy I was, when I got home, maybe an hour if I could in the evening practicing. Then on the weekends, I would try to spend between 3 to 4 hours on Saturday and then on Sunday studying.
Yeah. So basically you're putting in about a 10 to 15 hour study week.
That was my goal, the 10 to 15 hours a week. Yeah.
So you're putting in this 10 to 15 hours of study for an extended period of time. What was the impact of that on your wife and your family? How did they feel about that?
They didn't see me very much. So I was okay. My kids are older. I have two boys. One is in college. So he was away most of the time, except for the summer, but he was away at college doing sort of his own thing. And my other one's a senior in high school. So self-sufficient at this point, and they didn't require a lot of close parenting like you do when they're younger. But we still had time on the weekends. I would spend my wife and I still had time to go out to dinner and go on our date nights and things like that. It was just that some things like my hobbies is what I really had to give up. Things I like doing on the weekends, whether reading or working around the house, things like that. So I had to give up during studying for the bar exam.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that something's got to give. You've got to practice, you got a family, you got to study for the bar. Something's going to give. And so that's probably the most reasonable part of that. As you got into the study, and again, as a transactional attorney, somebody that's been out of school for 25 years, what was the most difficult part of getting back in and starting the process and studying for you?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's probably just getting in that mode again, that sort of student mode, because when you become a practicing lawyer, you kind of leave school behind. Not that you don't learn, you're always learning, but just much different from being a student and taking notes and going over things over and over again and trying to remember things. And that was a little bit more challenging to put yourself back in the law school learning.
Yeah, I think that is a big challenge for any practicing attorney that's coming back into this. As you were studying, you're learning this new style of writing for the bar exam. How compatible was that with what you were doing in practice? Was it at all like what you were doing, or was it completely different?
I thought that was actually not too bad. I do a lot, since I'm a transactional lawyer, I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of drafting of various legal agreements and memorandums to clients and things like that. I was actually pretty comfortable with the legal writing aspect of it. Your materials provide really good model answers to the essays, and you also a video on there that you give about how to structure your answers. Once I had that and I saw how you were structuring the answers, the way you were doing it, I took some practice tests and I compared mine to the answers. I was able to pretty much formulate what you were doing. I didn't think that was very difficult. It may be harder for another lawyer who's practicing a different type of law, but for what I do, that was actually one of the easiest things was the essay portion, I thought.
Right. Now, you purchased what we call our basic success course. You weren't getting personal, individualized coaching. You were just using the course materials. Sometimes people ask me, can you pass the exam with that course? The answer obviously is yes. You had enough support, you felt like, as you were going through the course?
I did. I had a couple of questions I emailed to you that you responded to promptly. The one thing I did do was I paid for the books. Was the one extra that I did get. And that's just my personal preference because I'm old school. I like having the books rather than printing a bunch of pages off my printer. I liked having the books, being able to open them up, mark them up, highlight things, write things in the margins. And I referred to those quite a bit as I went back through your lectures and through my own personal notes. I thought that was really helpful to me.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about the experience in Tampa, because it is unusual, isn't it? You show up and there's 3,000 people and it's pretty crazy.
Oh, that was, yes, that was interesting.
And what was your take on it when you were in Tampa? You've got all these people there. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot going on.
Tampa was interesting. You had to go a day early and you had to get your ID badge, which I thought I was going to have as a souvenir. Then you have to give it up when you leave, so you can't even take it with you. You're going to get to keep it. There were so many people taking the exam, and I thought it's interesting. When I thought, well, it's going to be me, an old guy, and a bunch of young law students, and it really wasn't that. I was surprised about. There was a lot of older people taking the exam. There was also a lot of young people too, but you're at these long tables and they fit two people. They're about 6 feet long, and actually the guy sitting next to me was a guy from Rockford, Illinois. He was like 60 years old, and he was taking the bar too. It's a really big mixture of people. When I took the bar exam, it was all young people. So that was
Yeah,
that
it's
was
definitely
interesting.
changed. Now, the pass rate on this exam was 39%. So, pretty tough exam. What did you think as you were leaving the test after a couple of days? Did you have a sense of how you'd done?
I was nervous about a couple of things. First day is Florida. Second day is the multi-state. So the Florida essay, I actually thought it was easier than I thought it was going to be. And there was a lot of stuff on there. There was stuff that I thought was going to be that wasn't on there. So I had studied, I was ready to take on Homestead, and I'd studied all the Florida constitutional law really hard, and ready to take on all the tax questions, and it didn't even appear on the test. And there was a federal constitutional law question, which was fine, and some other questions. So I thought I'd pretty good on the essay, but the Florida multiple choice I thought was really difficult. It was really state specific, and there were some things on there that I felt I wasn't sure I had really studied for or prepared for. For example, there was a lot of questions on Florida organizations and a lot of questions on Florida limited liability companies. So I was concerned after I took
Yeah,
these.
that was a twist, right? The examiners brought that out, and that was the first time. Welcome to Florida, right? And so you come out
Yeah,
feeling insecure about the Florida multiple choice. I think most people do. And then you go to the multi-state day, and multi-state is challenging.
multi-state is multi-state. So multi-state was what he thought it was going to be. It was very consistent, I thought, with what the practice exams. I didn't think there was anything that was unusual about that. Obviously, all the questions are mixed up and in various topics, and so that makes it a little bit difficult. But I wasn't really surprised at anything that took place in the multi-state exam. But I was really
And
nervous about that Florida multiple choice.
right. And then you got 6 weeks to wait while you're waiting for results. Tell me what it was like when you got the results.
I was super happy, really excited. I thought I probably did okay. It's good enough to pass, but I was still nervous. And so I was really happy when I saw that I had passed, because honestly, the way the exam works for practicing lawyers, it's very expensive to take the test. For people out of law school, it's not that expensive, but for practicing lawyers, especially ones that are practicing as long as I have, it's extremely expensive. So if I had not passed a Florida exam, I don't know if I was going to take it again, because it's quite expensive. So I was very happy to find that I had passed.
Yeah, and you didn't just barely pass, you passed with a very comfortable score. So congratulations for that. W- I'm sure your family was thrilled when they got the news that you had passed.
Yeah, my wife was happy. My kids were like, whatever. But my wife was happy for me.
I think you're right. Okay, fine, fair enough. What advice would you give to someone who's a practicing attorney that's thinking about taking the Florida exam?
Oh, definitely take a course. And I thought your course was great. I was looking around, and I wanted to take a course, and I stumbled across one of these videos. You were interviewing somebody from New York. And I remember they had a lawyer and they were an administrative judge or something. So they had a full-time job, and they had just passed the exam. You were talking to that person, and I liked it because it was obviously somebody like me who was practicing and had taken your course and had passed. And I said, well, that sounds fantastic. So then I looked up your course, and then I found you, and then you had this thing where you could like actually talk to you, where I was like, that's unusual. So I scheduled an interview, and you and I actually spoke in like live 15 minutes. And I asked you some questions about your course, about the bar exam. Who does that? You know what I mean? That was just fantastic. This one-on-one we could have. I asked you questions. You could walk me through your course and what you thought about my chances of passing and how your course would go. We thought the best options for me. You can't beat that one-on-one. Yeah, I would highly recommend. Number one, you have to take a bar exam course. You're not going to be able to walk in there and not take anything. You have to give yourself enough time for studying, because it's not an easy test. And number two, I thought your course was really fantastic for someone who's like me, a practicing lawyer, and really hasn't taken a bar exam for a long time and needs a refresher.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. That's kind. I like talking to students, so I know it is unusual, but I find it's really helpful to have those conversations. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I'm sure that just as you were watching somebody's interview, there'll be people that watch this interview and go, oh, yeah, that's me. I want to do that too. And I think the real takeaway is start early, be consistent in the work, follow the directions, right? And then go in and be confident, and you should be okay on this exam, even though it is very complicated and the application process is a nightmare, to be sure. It is possible to get through, and you're living proof of that. Do you plan to come to Florida soon, or are you going to stay up in the cold Illinois winters?
I don't know. I'd like to get down there. My wife and I really enjoy the weather, and we're getting a little bit too old for these hard Chicago winters.
Yeah, it's nice to have this in your back pocket, and congratulations on the hard work and the result that you got. We're very appreciative that you would share your story today. Any final comments or thoughts you want to leave us with?
I guess I'd just say it was a really good experience for me. I'm really happy I took your course. I'm confident I would not have passed the exam without taking the course. The celebration biography course fit what I was doing very well with being a practicing lawyer and need to refresh myself in all these various topics I had studied in, over 20 years.
That's great. Again, congratulations, John. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate it. And to all of you in the audience, thanks for being with us. Hope this was helpful to you, and good luck on your exams. And we'll talk to you again later. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.